Hello. I want to explain the information that we discussed in our class meeting discussion number 2. So if you go to the agenda activity section into the agenda and you click on Introduction to Arkansas Frameworks, there is a link that I have posted right here that will show you the Arkansas frameworks. And if you click on that, it will open to the Arkansas Department of Education page, and you will see that the subjects are listed at the bottom on the left side. And in our class the other night, we discussed as a whole group the English language arts, but you'll see there's fine arts, health and phys ed, library and media services, social studies, world languages. There's even the unit for literacy overseas, computer science, mathematics, sciences. I highly recommend that you open that link and go to this page and start looking at all the different standards that are listed in the Arkansas Framework Standards. These are the standards by which every teacher in a classroom is to teach, and it's all, of course, pending on the grade level and the subject area. I'm going to, just for our purposes of making sure you understand how to use the standards, I'm going to open the English language arts. Of course, if your interest is math, then please, when you start searching this for yourself, definitely look at the math standards. But just to help you understand, I'm going to open English language arts. Okay, so when you open this, you will see the different resources available. The first tab is standards and courses. We'll come back to that in just a moment. There are opportunities and options for professional development. Please go in there and surf around and see what opportunities are available to you. There are resources available. When you're planning a lesson and you want some additional resources, you can go right here to the resources tab and you can find additional pieces of information that you could incorporate into your lessons and your activities for your students. There's also programs and opportunities. So at your leisure, please surf in all of those and see what you can find. Standards and courses. Okay. So when I click on standards, that's what we're looking for, are the actual framework standards that you are to teach according to the grade level that you teach. So we're going to just open, and I want to show you first of all that in grades 9 and 10 and grades 11 and 12 in English language arts, there's only one set of standards for both of these two grades as well as these two grades. And that means that it's introduced in the 9th grade and it's reinforced in the 10th grade. So yes, they will have the same standards. You just emphasize it a bit stronger if you're a 10th grade teacher. Introduced in the 11th grade, re-emphasized in the 12th grade. Okay, so I'm going to open the PDF version of the 6th grade English language arts. And when you open, this is what we have, grade 6, Arkansas English Language Arts Standards. Okay, and these were developed in 2016. So we scroll on down, we have our introduction. You can go back and read that for yourself later. Let me very quickly go over this. This is how to read the standards document. This, of course, is the name and the description. Language arts, and it's kindergarten. Okay. This is the conceptual organizer. The categories of the related standards, of course, are the conventions of standard English. The italicized words are definitions that are found in the teacher note and glossary. So if you are reading a standard and you see italicized words, then you can go to the teacher note and glossary section and you can find a definition for that. Teacher notes and explanations. This also reiterates, it gives you additional notes. So, right here for the standard English grammar, we see, or the conventions of standard English grammar and usage, we see a definition. We see a little additional pieces of information to help us better understand what that means and from where it's coming from, the references, or even some additional links that will take you directly to another source. Okay. The bulleted list items must be taught. If it has a bullet, this is an item that must be taught in this grade level. Okay, so pay attention to those bullets. Here's another bullet. In using adjectives, they need to use determiners, noun markers, and to add specifically. Okay, so pay attention to those bullets because those are the specific things that must be taught. When you have an EG and a listing, those are just suggestions that you can use in teaching this. And of course, it's just a suggestion. You can use many other examples when teaching this, and certainly you'll want to use more examples than what is provided in the example suggestion list. If it is bold, this is the grade level standard. So if it's bolded, this is the standard that is introduced at this grade level. If it's regular font, it's going back to a notation to the teacher, kind of giving a little extra information for the teacher. This standard begins in grade 1 and must be continued and taught at this grade level. Yes, 6th grade level. So this indicates to us that this standard was introduced in grade 1 and it just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper as they move through the grade levels. A left alignment means it is the grade level standard, and the center alignment means that the standard is above or below. And here this standard begins at grade 1. That is centered, and that tells us it began way below grade 6. Okay, so on your own, when you go to this site, pay attention to this. Okay. The letter in the first position is the standard numbering system, and it represents the strand. For example, this L here represents language. If it shows an RL, it's reading literature. If it's an RI, it's reading informational. If it's RF, it's reading foundational. And if it's a W, of course, it's writing. And then SL stands for speaking and listening. The K is the symbol in the second position of the standard numbering, and it represents the grade level. Okay, grade level. Now, yes, in this case, it would be 6, but this is just an example showing us that it even goes back to the kindergarten. The number in the third position represents the actual number of that standard. So in this one, we have language, kindergarten, standard 1. And then some of the standards are broken down into segments that are represented by the letter in the fourth position. Not all, but most of them are going to have a letter. So language, kindergarten, standard 1A. And then you might have language, kindergarten, standard 1B, 1C, and so on and so forth. Okay, this one is reading. This represents college and career readiness. Even in elementary, we need to be focused on preparing the students for college and career readiness. So anytime you see CCR, that means college and career readiness. And then, of course, number 1 is the number of the standard. Okay. Arkansas Anchor Standards for Reading. Here are the basic anchors for the standards for reading: the key ideas and details, the craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas, and of course the range of reading and level of context complex or text complexity. Read through that very carefully. Here we have our standards, our grade level, or our area of the standard, our grade level, and then the standard number. Okay. If you forget what some of these letters represent, go back. Some teachers, and I've even done this myself, I cut this out. I print this off and cut this out and just have it at my desk. Because I'll forget what was RL. Oh yeah, that means reading literature. So and then the grade level and then the standard number. Okay, so as we're looking at this, we see that reading level or reading literature grade 6, the fourth standard means that they are to determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a text, including figurative and connotative meanings. And then they are to analyze the impact of a specific word choice on meaning and or tone. And then here's a teacher's note to give you some additional insight. This note, yes, here's the note. Tone is the author's attitude toward the subject, characters, or situation. Examples of tone would be amused, sad, and angry. So you see, here is the standard that you are to teach the students. Here is an additional note because you may not understand the italicized word tone. So here's a definition of tone, and here's some examples as you're teaching it. Okay, so as you can see, the standards are laid out. They're easy for teachers to understand. They provide explanation, and they're easy for you to come up with examples. The teaching activities that you would come up with would be up to you. And that's where going to the place before you open the standards, do you remember I told you there were resources available? So you could go to the resources and find some ideas for activities that you could use in teaching craft and structure when reading literature. Okay, so that is how you use the standards, and this is just reading literature. And of course it's going to go into reading integration all the way. It's going to go through every standard all the way to writing. And let me say this too, okay, there may be times when they are working on reading and determining the meaning of words and phrases. So you're working on that standard. Okay, so if you'll notice, let me backtrack before I get into that. Determining the meaning of words and phrases. Okay, RI 6.4 and RL 6.4 are very closely connected. Reading literature, reading integration. Okay, so you could teach RL 6.4, RI 6.4, and then you could drop down to writing. So you can teach that, you can practice that, give them activities so that they can go in and interpret the meanings of certain words and so forth. And then you could have them to begin writing. Write an informative explanatory text. You could bring them, let's see, let me look for a good one. 6.1c, using words and phrases and clauses to clarify relationships among claims and reasons. Write an argument to support the claims. Establish and maintain a formal writing style. So if you're teaching writing, you can also incorporate some of these others. So you would have one specific focus in your writing technique that you're teaching them. You're teaching them something specific about writing, and you're looking for that one specific thing that you're teaching them. Maybe you're just teaching them to introduce claims. So they have to go back and be able to, and if you incorporate these together, they have to determine the meaning of words. So they have to understand how is this word or this being used in this text, this word or phrase, and what is it meaning? Is it a figurative, or is it a definite dictionary definition, or does it just have connotative meanings to someone? And so then you would go down here to their writing, and you're going to have them to write just a little bit of an argument, or you're going to have them to just write out some words and phrases and clauses that clarify a relationship among a claim or a reason, a claim and a reason why. And you would use the words or texts, words or phrases that they've been digging into and determining what do those mean. Okay, you could also incorporate analyzing, have them to analyze it after they determine the meaning of it. Take them to standard number 5, in which they analyze, and then you can take them to writing. Okay, so as you see, the standards, as you're teaching a unit, you might spend a whole week covering two or three standards in the English language arts, but you spread that out over a series of a whole week. So on day 1, we're just going to be reading some informational text, and we're going to be pulling out some words, and we're going to be determining what do these words or phrases mean in context of the information in which we read these words or phrases. Okay, so sometimes a lesson plan will span 2 or 3 standards, and it will be extended over the period of a week or 2 weeks. That it just varies. So what I want you to do now on your own is I want you to go through that website and look at first of all, think about your focus area. What are you wanting to teach by the time you complete your bachelor's degree? What do you want to teach? And pick a subject area that is of interest to you, and then pick a grade level that is of interest to you. Okay? And then after you do that, then I'm going to have you, and I'm going to go ahead and show you where the lesson plan template is, because this is where you find the standard. Tuesday, September the 3rd through Saturday, September the 7th is when we covered this. This was last week. Go pull up the website that will take you to the standards, the Arkansas Framework Standards. And then in class, we also went over the lesson plans, and you will find that down here in week 7. Okay, so you're going to find a lesson plan template in week 7. Okay, I want you to go ahead and pull up that lesson plan template. That's what I told everyone in class last night or last week. You are required to complete a lesson plan that you will actually go out and teach to a group of students in a classroom, and you need to select that classroom as you're doing your observations. But you will need to not teach that lesson by October the 2nd, but you will need to plan that lesson extensively, completing the lesson plan template and gathering all of your materials and resources. And at our class meeting on October the 2nd, I want to see everyone's lesson plans and the materials that you are going to use in the activities and the teaching of that lesson. Now, we're pulling this up today. It's in week 7. It's found in additional resources. It's Common Core Aligned Lesson Plan Template. So if you will open that lesson plan template, I'm going to explain to you the subject, English Language Arts, math, social studies, science, whatever you select, whatever subject area you select, and what grade level. So you would fill this information in, and you should be able to write on it. You might have to kind of work with it. English language arts. Okay. And in that case, I would just do that. Just delete those line spaces. Okay. And we looked at grade level 6. Okay. Not that you have to teach that, but you create your own. The teacher for me would be Mrs. Toon, and you would be Miss Scarlett. Okay. School, and this is where you're going to fill out. Now, when you're doing this as practice, you don't have to put a school on there, but once you decide which group you're going to teach your lesson to, you'll indicate the school right there. It may be Thayer for you, Thayer Elementary. I'm not sure if it has a different name or not. I can't even type. Okay, so you can type right on the form, and again, if your lines go nutso like that, just delete those lines. Okay. Common Core Learning Standard. Now, I've already closed out this standard, so I'm not going to be able to open that up to you, but you're going to write out like it would be, like we looked at RL 6.4, okay? And it may have had a point. I can't remember. I always put a point. 6.4, which means reading literature, grade level 6, standard number 4. And then after that, and I've already closed that out, so I can't go back and type, but you would type in the actual words that are found in that standard. What is that standard specifically? So type that out in word form. What are the learning targets? In other words, what will these students be able to know and do as a result of this lesson? And here you can put bullets. Students will be able to locate and determine meaning of words and phrases in a text. Students will also be able to, maybe I'm going to cover standards 4 and 5. So not only will they locate and determine the meanings of those words, but they will also analyze the meaning of words and phrases in a text. Okay, so what is the relevance or the rationale? Why are the outcomes of this lesson important in the real world setting? Okay, so you actually have, and you can do bullets again. You don't have to make full out sentences. Why is this important in the real world setting? Because they need to be able to understand information that they are reading. Why are the outcomes essential for future learning? Because this is a progression, and they will have to do more with this, and they will also have to extend it into their writing assignments, and they will have to do deeper analyzing with each grade level. Also, they will have to, in their textbooks, in their science textbooks, in their social studies textbooks, they're going to have to be able to read the information and know what it means, pull out the tone of the situation, and then analyze what is actually going on in that situation. So this is something they're going to have to be able to do not only in the real world sense, when they're planning family vacations and they're looking at travel brochures and so forth, when they're reading informational text in the workforce, they're reading some information that their boss has just given them that they've got to work up a project for or whatever. And then also, these are essential for their future learning because it is a building block, and scaffolding takes place in the classroom, and it builds from year to year, and it progresses from the beginning to the middle to the end of the year, and then it continues to build with each grade level thereafter. Okay, what is the formative assessment? That is the criteria for success. How will you and your students know if they've successfully met these outcomes? This is where you tell me specifically. Number one, I'm going to give them independent an independent assignment to see if they can manage this on their own. And then I'm going to give them a test over a piece of reading material in which they are going to have to read the document and then tell me what the underlined or bolded words and phrases mean in context of the information in each paragraph or something like that. So what kind of specific information are you expecting them to successfully know how to work with and know what to do? In other words, how are you going to know that they have successfully understood what you've taught them? What does success look like? So success looks like they are able to interpret the meaning of all underlined words, or at least 90% of all underlined words, and they are able to tell me what it means in each context. What are the activities? Okay, first, and I would say first and foremost, you want to model and explain. You want to demonstrate to them, kind of like I'm modeling it for you right now, and I'm explaining it to you right now. And model and explain via visuals on the projector screen, kind of like what you're seeing right now. You're seeing it projected. So I'm going to model it and explain it via the visuals, and I would put in parentheses maybe what that visual might be. For you, I'm showing you the lesson plan template. Okay. So I'm showing you the lesson plan template. This is what I'm modeling, and I'm showing you how it's done. I'm explaining it to you as we go. So you're getting to visually see the document. You might give them all a handout that has paragraphs or a short story written on it, and it's got some bolded words, and you do the actual lesson with them. You are modeling, you're showing them, let's look at this bolded word. Wonder what that word means. I think that word means da da da. Let's read it in context and make sure that that makes sense in the course of this paragraph or this short story. Okay, activity number 2, break into, I can't type, into small groups. Give each group a handout of a short story. If you were teaching the reading informational skill, or you might instead of a handout of a short story, you might give them a book, a reading book. They each have their own reading book, and you assign them to read a certain paragraph. Maybe you're all reading, it's in your reading literature book, and you assign them this particular story in this textbook, and have them to do this page through this page and to pull out some key words. Maybe you have a list of words that you give them that you want them to pull out these words and phrases and tell specifically what those words and phrases mean, and then be able to, what is the tone that the author is setting by using those words and phrases. So you give them, right here, you give me specific directions when they break into groups. Whoops, sorry about that. So they break into groups, and for step number 2A, that's where they are going to read the material and find the list of words provided by the teacher. And then they're going to determine as a group, now remember they're working as a group, determine the meaning of those words or phrases. And then they're going to determine the author's tone from the text, or I use the context in which they are used. And that means that they're going to have to decide the way the author used that phrase in this paragraph. He was having an angry tone, or he was having some kind of tone. So they will have to list that. And then we go back to number 3. And after they do their group work, we will as a class hear from each group. So we're going to hear from each group what they came up with. And I'm writing this in a hurry, and this might be articulated better. I'm just doing it very quickly. What they came up with in their small groups. Okay, and then 4, give each student an individual assignment to see if they can work independently. And here, again, I would go under this and I would say A, what are the, and again, give them the specific steps for their individual assignment to make sure that they can work independently. That means they can do this assignment by themselves with very little or no help from you as the teacher. Then, okay, so after A and B, then you would come to number 5, and that's where you would assess or give assessment. And that would be like the test where you test them and have them to prove that they have mastered this, okay? What resources? This is where you can bullet and list all of the resources that you would use. Of course, you would use the projector and teacher made, or projector and short story overhead. You would provide reading texts, and that could be handouts of a short story. It could be the reading literature book, whatever it is, specifically listed. The reading literature book, pages 16 through 25, okay? And any other additional materials, whatever materials you use in this lesson, you list it out. Access for all. How are you going to ensure that all the students have access to and are able to engage appropriately in this lesson? You must consider all aspects of students' diversity. Okay, so for those, you're going to provide all the materials in the classroom, the reading textbooks, whatever. So you make that statement that you will provide all the materials for the students. You might even use sticky notes where you have the students to put sticky notes in certain places of the material, the reading material, to pull out certain key words and phrases. If you're going to use those, then make sure you list that in your resources, and then you provide those for each student. This is also where you want to consider uh, all aspects of students. If you've got students who are English as a second language, then how are you going to accommodate them? You might have an audio version of the reading material so that they can follow along as it is being read to them. You might have, in this case, if you have a parapro in the classroom, that parapro could be reading to the students. And that would help you, that would help the student to better understand. There may be students who struggle with reading and they're not quite on the sixth grade reading level. So for that student, you would have them in a separate group. Maybe it's a group of students, and you would give them a different reading story. And in this case, you are going to provide the materials for the student based on each student's learning capacity level. Okay, and then we get here and we have the modifications, and this is where I section it off to, and you can call it the strugglers. Now, this is for you only to see, or your principal if he comes in and wants to see what you've got. So I've got the strugglers. And this is where you're going to make accommodations and modifications for the different learning levels of students in your classroom. So let's say you've got the strugglers. You're going to give them, give reading level appropriate reading material. Now they can do the whatever. Whenever you model this, you can all do the same thing because you're doing it with them and you're reading it to them and you're pointing it out to them. But when it comes to their working independently or in their small groups, they need their reading level appropriate reading material. Perhaps the strugglers, if you've got a specific short story, name, title, I would suggest you put that right here. Give reading level appropriate material. The strugglers will be reading See Spot Run. Okay, so as they're reading See Spot Run, then they're going to be working with that. So that's how you are accommodating that group. And then you've got your on grade level. And you can figure out a way you can divide this and make it go straight down, which that might be easier. Let me do that. So this is the on grade level, and how will I accommodate them? Okay, so these students, and if you're going to give each one a different reading material, I would make copies of it and give them handouts so that way everybody has something different, and it's not like they say, well, they're reading in the textbook and they're having to read in a lower level. So you want to be very careful as to how you set that up. So the on grade level students, maybe you have they're going to have on grade level reading material, and their reading material is from their Paul Bunyan, the story of Paul Bunyan, from their reading lit book, and maybe you've made copies of that so they all have a handout. And that also helps because they can highlight and underline or circle those words and phrases you're having them to look for. And then we've got that group that is extremely gifted, and you want to give them advanced reading material. And please ignore all of my typos today because I'm in a hurry. So they're going to have advanced reading material. Perhaps they're going to read not the whole novel, but just a little excerpt from They're 6th grade level. Maybe they're reading an excerpt from the novel David Copperfield. Okay, because they can actually comprehend and work with more intense and difficult language. Okay, so this is how you accommodate. Now you're also going to, you can add this in, that you will walk around. In this case, you might give one instruction step at a time. Okay, so after they complete this instruction, then they come back and they read another. So maybe they just go through and they look for all of these words and they highlight these words. They don't read the story yet. Maybe step 1 for the strugglers, you've given them a list of words, and now every time they see that list or those phrases, they're going to go through and they're going to highlight those, and they can talk about it and say, oh, I found one on page 20. So everybody goes to page 20 and highlights it. Okay, no, don't give them 20 pages to read in this, but you know what I'm saying. And then you're going to come back and you're going to say, okay, now you've highlighted all these words. Now I want you to go back through and tell what each one of these words means. Oh, and also, of course, in their accommodations, they're going to have shorter pieces to read. So shorter stories, maybe not a whole story. They're just going to have a couple of pages to read. Okay, so you will know your strugglers and you'll want to break that down. So give as much specific information as you can to how you're going to make these accommodations. This group, you can give them all instructions. Give all instructions at once and have them posted on the board or smart board via projector to help them remember, because they might forget. So you're going to give them all the instructions at once, but you're also going to give them some form of written step-by-step instructions so that they can look back at there and go, okay, we just finished step number 1, now what's step 2? And they can figure that out for themselves on the grade level. On this group, you're going to give them, you could even give them some advanced, and you could say, not only are you supposed to analyze and determine what they mean, but and pull out the author's tone, but go a step further and decide, why in the world did the author choose this phrase? You know, you give them a couple of extra questions to work with. Now, you're not giving them extra work, but you're giving them more critical thinking skills to have them to expand, because they can work through this pretty quickly. So you don't want them to get finished like within 5 minutes and then be sitting there bored out of their gourd, because once they get bored, they become frustrated and then they start creating their own stuff, and that's usually not pleasant. Okay, so we're going to come back, and after you do this lesson, here's what I want you to do. For practice, I want you to create a lesson plan, and I want you to email it to me, Carmen, in the course email, and then I'll take a look at it and we can talk about your lesson plan that you created, and I can answer any of your questions, and then after you've done that, then you will be ready to start working independently on your own lesson plan. You are at a slight disadvantage because the other students did have a partner, or a whole team to work with the other night in our class session. But you can do this, and then you can call me after you've made it and emailed it to me through the course email, and then you and I can discuss it. We can both pull it up on our computers and we can look at it together, and we can talk about, some things that you could do differently, or hey, I have a feeling you're going to master this right off the bat and you're not really going to need my help, but I will go over it with you after you've had the practice. Everybody else had practice in class. You're going to have independent practice before you actually do this on your own. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up so that I can get this video sent to you. I've covered everything. I was going to do it in a 2-part video, but I went ahead and put it all together as one video. Please let me know if you need my assistance in anything. Remember, and my computer is, our internet here. Oh my goodness, now what's happening? I don't know. Okay. It's doing really weird things. But remember, the Arkansas frameworks are found in week 3. And after you go through this and I see your practice lesson plans, I'll give you your 40 points for this assignment that they all worked on in class. And after we talk on the phone and discuss the lesson plan that you came up with, I'll give you your 50 points for the class meeting, okay? Remember, the frameworks are in week 3, and then the lesson plan template that you want to pull up is found in week 7 under the title Lesson Plan Aligned to Arkansas Frameworks. Now, you do not submit your final lesson plan at this point, but just play around with it and practice with it first, and then you'll be ready to start working on your final lesson plan that you will actually teach in a classroom to a group of students. Okay, wrapping it up now, and you have a great day and enjoy this lesson plan, these standards, and have fun with it.